tough talk from U.S. President Donald Trump during his first address to the UN General Assembly. A new report by the United Nations says global hunger is on the rise. And Kenya dump dwellers make a living recycling hair extensions. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. U.S. President Donald Trump delivered his highly anticipated first address to the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday. He began his speech by reiterating his stance on emphasizing America's citizens first, but then quickly turned to harshly criticize Iran, Syria, and North Korea. The president spoke in extremely and very direct, tough terms about the North Korean menace and the threat it poses to U.S. and world security.
If the righteous many do not confront the wicked few, then evil will triumph. When decent people and nations become bystanders to history, the forces of destruction only gather power and strength. No one has shown more contempt for other nations and for the well-being of their own people than the depraved regime in North Korea. It is responsible for the starvation deaths of millions of North Koreans and for the imprisonment, torture, killing, and oppression of countless more.
But President Trump went on to send a direct message to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, threatening to destroy the Asian nation if the U.S. is forced to defend itself and its allies from a nuclear attack.
The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. That's what the United Nations is for. Let's see how they do.
Well, Nigerian president also spoke at the UNGA, talking about the multiple fronts the UN is spearheading to help countries and people in need. Muhammadu Buhari reaffirmed Nigeria's commitment to the goals and principles of the UN, including the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. He also talked about ISIS fighters infiltrating into the Sahel and called for the cooperation of the international community under the leadership of the United Nations.
This will require strong United Nations cooperation with regional organizations such as the African Union in conflict prevention and management. The United Nations should continue to take primary leadership of the maintenance of international peace and security by providing, in a predictable and sustainable manner, adequate funding and other enablers to regional initiatives and peacekeeping operations authorized by the Security Council.
Well, for more insights on Donald Trump's tough talking address, let's go live to United Nations, where viewers Margaret Bashir is standing by. Now, Margaret, the president talked about other things, but it looks like his aggressive speech appeared to be aimed directly at the leadership in North Korea, Iran, and Syria, right?
That was a very unambiguous message he sent to the Rocket Man, definitely. Kim Jong-un is on notice.
Yes. Now, in terms of the expectations, you know, there might have been other things that people wanted to hear the president talk about, some of the issues that have been of concern to world leaders. Did that come through besides this?
Well, I think leading up to the speech, usually the first time a U.S. president speaks here, there's a lot of excitement. I've been here for all of President Obama's administration, and people were always really excited to hear from him, especially his first year. It was absolute madness here. But I think this year people were a little anxious about what they might hear from Donald Trump because he's a bit of a wild card, so to speak. And so I think some people will be relieved. He stuck to the teleprompter. He delivered a very presidential, dignified speech. But at the same time, they're going to be a little concerned about some of the content. Threatening to totally destroy another UN member state is strong language indeed. His language on the Iran nuclear deal, calling it a big embarrassment for the United States, hinting that he may not recertify it next month when it comes up for that in the U.S. He could try and pull the U.S. out of that deal. We did not hear from him about climate change. That's a big issue. A lot of countries were waiting to hear about. The U.S. has indicated with the new administration that it plans to pull out of the Paris Accord. They're waiting for confirmation of this. There's been some back and forth on it in the last few days in the media here from U.S. officials. So no decision either way from Mr. Trump today on climate change. We didn't hear him criticize Russia. You know, Russia has been a big story in the United States. The Russians meddled in our elections. The president did not criticize Russia. He made a small allusion to the Russians and the Chinese, saying that there's a threat to sovereignty from the Ukraine to the South China Sea. So a little swipe at both Russia and China, but also he thanked them for their support getting economic sanctions against North Korea in the Security Council. So a mixed bag. Also mentioned the crisis in Myanmar that has erupted in the last month with the Rohingya Muslims.
In a few seconds, how about the African leaders? Buhari spoke there, and later on Ellen Johnson. What stood out?
Well, I thought President Buhari still looked a bit weak, not fully recovered, maybe very thin and labored in his speech. He did talk about North Korea, and he suggested that a UN Security Council delegation should go to Pyongyang and talk to Kim Jong-un because this is such a serious crisis. And he also addressed the Myanmar situation. Nigeria has a large Muslim population, and he called for an end to the ethnic cleansing there.
Well, Margaret, thank you very much as always.
Thank you.
Viewers, Margaret Bashir reporting live from the United Nations. Now, for all the UN Assembly, General Assembly news, be sure to follow Margaret on Twitter at @mbashir. Going over to the north of the continent, migrants rescued in the Mediterranean last week say they feel extremely fortunate to have dodged increased sea and police patrols along the western coast of Libya. Last month, Reuters reported that an armed group has been stopping departures from Sabratha in Libya, which has been a main springboard for smuggling for the past 2 years. On Thursday, the Aquarius rescue ship, run by humanitarian groups SOS Mediterranean and Doctors Without Borders, picked up 2 rubber boats carrying a total of more than 260 migrants who had left from Sabratha. Noor Cornelissen, the humanitarian affairs officer on the Aquarius, said it was common to hear stories of migrants who were repeatedly attempting to cross the sea and sent back to Libya.
The one thing that keeps coming back in all the interviews is this cycle of abuse. So you really have this sense of people being kicked around from one place to the next and unable to escape out of that. Doesn't matter how much ransom they're paying, doesn't matter who they're meeting along the journey. A lot of people, they perhaps leave their home country being smuggled, but become trafficked along the way.
Khalid Baba, 58, was rescued at sea along with his wife and 3 children, the youngest only 8 months old. Baba had worked at the French embassy in Tripoli for 5 years, but decided it was too dangerous to stay on after his 15-year-old son had been kidnapped and ransomed. Even though he survived the sea crossing, he said he would advise anyone wishing to make the journey not to go through with it.
The boat was bursting. It was a catastrophe. We looked death in the face. I wept. I've got to a certain age. I was worried about my children. I said to myself, you've brought your children to die in the sea. That was my big regret. I would sincerely advise people against taking the boat, whatever it might cost.
Umaru from Sierra Leone, who declined to give his last name, spoke a day after being picked out.
For the tube, for the boat, it's only God will make you survive. Because in the water, in Libya water, Zabata, there are plenty of police. They call them the calabush people. When they calabush you, they will take you to the jail. When they take you to the jail, they will ask you to send money. Let them free you from the jail.
Other migrants on board the Aquarius said they had been fortunate to escape death, but had received daily beatings whilst detained in Libya. Italy has led the European Union strategy to try to bolster the capability of local authorities, and especially the Libyan Coast Guard, so that they can shut down the Central Mediterranean smuggling route, which is now the main one to Europe.
Let me say it is chance of luck. You are lucky, you make it. If you're not lucky, they will calabush you, because there's plenty ship. Let me say I really don't know how to mention it. The submarine, the ships in the sea.
Arrivals in Italy rescued migrants fell 50% in July from a year earlier and declined more than 80% in August, 2 months that had been peak periods during the previous 3 years. Overall, there have been more than 100,000 arrivals to Italy this year, a more than 20% decline on 2016. The Italy-EU strategy has been strongly criticized by charity groups, including MSF, because migrants returned to Libya by Coast Guard are detained arbitrarily in filthy centers with no health care, little food, and abusive jailers. And to the south of the continent, Zimbabwe opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai is out of danger in a South African hospital after being airlifted from Harare at the weekend following the sudden onset of severe vomiting. Now, according to a member of Tsvangirai's Movement for Democratic Change party, the 65-year-old's symptoms came on suddenly at an MDC meeting on Thursday evening in Kadoma, 160 kilometers southwest of the Zimbabwean capital, as Tsvangirai is receiving treatment for colon cancer. But MDC party sources told Reuters his sudden illness is not thought to be related to his cancer. Well, a new report by the United Nations says global hunger is on the rise. Here's Africa 54's health correspondent Lino Madu.
The Sustainable Development Goal number 2 aims to end all forms of hunger and malnutrition by the year 2030. However, a report released recently by the United Nations shows that global hunger is on the rise. Stefan Dujarric is a spokesperson for the Secretary General of the United Nations.
After years of progress, the report finds that the number of hungry people around the world is on the rise. This signals a reversal of trends and could undermine efforts at reaching zero hunger by 2030.
The report was prepared by several agencies, including the World Food Programme, the Food and Agriculture Organization, and the World Health Organization. It shows an increase of 38 million in the number of people facing hunger worldwide. The report also finds that about 155 million children aged under 5 are stunted, and 52 million suffer from wasting, meaning their weight is too low for their height.
These worsening figures are also directly linked to the increase in conflicts around the world, into places where there is conflict and floods and droughts. Food insecurity has worsened, especially in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and Western Asia.
The report states that there is a high risk of famine occurring in conflict-affected places, namely northeast Nigeria, Somalia, and Yemen. It also adds that droughts or floods linked in part to the El Niño weather phenomenon, as well as the global economic slowdown, have also resulted in food and nutrition insecurity, even in regions that are more peaceful. In the Ethiopia's Somali region, rains have failed for the 3rd consecutive year, leading to a devastating drought that left its people experiencing emergency levels of hunger. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization says about 2 million animals have died here since the end of last year, crippling herding communities.
What we're trying to do here is to save lives. And here, save lives of a community of pastoralists means also save their animals. Because without their animals, they will not have milk for their children. The children also will die or suffer it.
One thing is for sure, we cannot just continue going by a project approach. We have, as not only three of us, the three agencies, what I will call the whole development community has to really look at ways. Obviously, we need to have much more synergy between the different actions. We saw colleagues from different NGOs as well. But globally, we need to scale up.
The United Nations says close to 17 million people across the Horn of Africa need humanitarian aid due to drought, including 2.6 million in Kenya and 3.2 million in Somalia. Linor Moudou, VOA News, Washington.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Coming up, what to expect at Maryland's African Heritage Festival. Stay with us.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon Beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
Welcome back. Now, September is African Heritage Month in the U.S. state of Maryland, a celebration of the rich and diverse culture of the African community within that state. Now, to tell us more about it, I'm joined by Stephen McAdams, Executive Director, Maryland Governor's Office of Community Initiatives, and Frederick Noma Addison, the Commissioner on the Maryland Governor's Commission on African Affairs. Gentlemen, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
Now, if I may begin with you first, for those of our viewers abroad and elsewhere may want to know, why would the state of Maryland decide to devote a month to this celebration of Africans?
Well, first off, thank you, Vincent, for having us on. And second, the governor of Maryland realizes how important the community to us, and it's all about messaging. We want to make sure that we let people know that we appreciate them, we appreciate the culture. We want to embrace their dreams and let them know that we're there for them as far as support. And we want to let them know that they have a direct access to Governor Hogan's office. And we want to hear what they have to help grow the culture and grow opportunities for the community.
Yes. Now, Frederick, as an African who resides in Maryland and the U.S., we know that living abroad, living in another country is tough on its own.
That's
How
correct.
does it make you feel and the rest of the community members to have this kind of engagement with the government of Maryland?
It's very heartwarming, it's exciting, and it's reassuring that the governor and his lieutenant are dedicating attention to the whole 120,000 of us in the state. The event, the big one, which is the gala and award ceremony, is happening on Wednesday the 20th. That's just tomorrow evening in downtown Silver Spring. And you don't often get the lieutenant governor, the secretary of state, and this time we're also having the African Union permanent representative to the United States participating. That means that the governor puts us way at the top.
Yeah.
So I would say it's pretty reassuring.
Really. Now, Stephen, how has it been celebrated throughout the month, just before the culmination of this event on Wednesday?
So the way we interact with the community is that we go to the different events throughout the state, and we want to let them know that we're there for their partnership. So it's been a great celebration, a lot of community events. And there's a lot of excitement for opportunity and what's happening in the state of Maryland.
Yes. Now, Frederick,
yes.
You are a commissioner.
That's correct.
Sounds like a big guy. Tell us what you do in relation to the Africans, the 120,000 plus
That is correct.
Africans who live in Maryland.
Well, the commission is constituted of 21 commissioners. We have a chair, Kehinde, a Nigerian native, who's doing a fabulous job. And there are 4 subcommittees, the Committee on Culture and Religion, the Committee on Business. In the past 6 months, we've had 2 very important business outreaches to the business community in the state. We also have the Health and Outreach Subcommittee and then the Education Subcommittee. So this has guided our work. All the 21 commissioners move in different directions to address issues under these 4 categories. So that's what we've done. Now, in this week, come Saturday after the gala, we're having a very big health symposium. And we're reaching out to the health professionals and the community in general. We're happy to be partnering with Discovery Learning Alliance that will be screening a film on health and wellness, something that was filmed in Africa called The Lucky Special. So these are the directions in which our work goes.
Mm-hmm. So, Stephen, you can add on to that, but also the whole question of the contribution that the immigrant community makes. What levels of contribution can you quickly mention of their contribution to the state?
Well, it's from all levels, whether it's cultural, whether it's economical, whether it's from the business community. You know, the governor's platform is basically the state of Maryland is open for everybody, and we want to make sure that we support whatever your interests are. We were talking about the business symposiums. We put on a program with XM Import Bank financing to try and help people. There's a big ask in the community to want to try and do things in the homeland to help with building business and opportunity, and we're trying to bring those tools. But it's across the spectrum. It's just such a rich community. It's a very self-driven community, and it's very highly educated, and those are great qualities to have in the citizens of Maryland, and we feel fortunate to have them.
Now, Frederick, we're both from Africa. We know that continent can be extremely divided along ethnic line, national lines. Now, as those who live in Maryland, do you see each other as from this country, that country, or does this unite you as one entity of Africans who reside in Maryland?
There are divisions, but one of the goals of the commission is to try to pull us all together so we have a common voice and have an authority in the state, so that when we present any agenda to the governor and his staff, they can articulate it and represent us very well. So that's one of the things we're trying to do, because even the commission, 21, we have several countries represented, and we're learning to work with each other to bring the common goal.
A little bit of Africa Union, a mini Africa Union within. Correct. Perhaps that's why you're bringing the African Union representative there.
Right.
And maybe a model that can be used even by our brothers on the continent to kind of people can be together and work together. So in terms of what more the governor of Maryland can do to make the residents of Maryland feel even more at home, what are some of the plans? What are some of the things ahead?
Well, Governor Hogan's biggest platform and the biggest way he can help impact people's lives is by creating a culture and a climate within the state that gives a lot of stability towards opportunity for all. So anybody who is willing to step up and take that opportunity, whether it be a business, whether it be through education, whether it be through raising your family locally, anything that we can do, and he is doing, to try and create a more favorable environment to nurture and grow.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing because you also have other communities from other regions of the world, and they're similarly organized in the same way. But
so it all comes down to messaging. You know, the first message is that we want to let everybody know that, hey, we're part of Maryland, and we're proud that you're here, part of Maryland. And we also try and encourage everybody to respect everybody's different cultures and differences. Right. But really, the key is that we want to do what's right and give everybody an opportunity.
Frederick, last word.
I think it's great that we have a commission representing our people, because there have been resources in the state of Maryland, but in the past, because of the lack of connection to the government offices, a lot of times these opportunities have not been known about by our communities. Now, 21 of us are moving in different directions at the grassroots level, and we're serving basically as the eyes and ears of the governor. So we are very proud to have this opportunity. And on behalf of all my colleague commissioners, we thank the governor, and we're excited about what the future holds for us.
I think it's a great event. It's a great form of engagement between the immigrant community and the U.S. local government. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Vincent.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Now, Frederick, we want to thank Frederick and Stephen for joining us today here on Africa 54. Stephen McAdams is the Executive Director, Maryland Governor's Office of Community Initiatives, and Frederick Noma Addison is a commissioner on the Maryland Governor's Commission on African Affairs. Now it's time for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, turning trash from a Kenyan dump into treasure. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Nigeria, suicide bombers killed 12 and injured 26 in the northeast state of Borno. In Kenya, the United Nations Environment Program supports a ban on plastic bags to help preserve the environment and keep litter out of the streets and waterways. South Africa, Olympic runner Oscar Pistorius will face another legal challenge as prosecutors want the convicted murderer's sentence to be increased to 15 years. South African model Gabriella Engels appears in court to challenge Zimbabwean First Lady Grace Mugabe's diplomatic immunity. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. A Russian father has invented a smart crib that can gently rock a baby to sleep, all controlled via an app. The rocking mechanism is meant to soothe the child and help both parents and babies get a good night's rest. An electromagnetic coil is installed on the stable part of the pendulum bed and the permanent magnet on the moving part. When the coil is connected to power, it starts to pull up and then push away the magnet and the upper side of the crib attached to it. The best part? No noise. Quiet. Now, next up, authorities in Jakarta, Indonesia, have launched a campaign to provide free home renovations to low-income residents. The project, run by the Jakarta administration, is hoping to complete around 67 homes in poverty-stricken areas by mid-October. Under the plan, residents can apply to have their homes renovated if they can prove they can't afford to do it themselves. However, they must own the land and have building certificates. Now, owning land and having building certificates is still an issue in Jakarta because many live illegally in the poor area. Well, and finally, Nairobi's Dandora Municipal Dam site stretches as far as the eye can see. An estimated 6,000 people make their living by scavenging waste in Dandora, sifting through garbage for items they can sell. One trash picker has a small business buying hair collected by boys in the dam site and selling it on their salons for a small profit. Now, of all the different types of hair extensions, human hair is the most coveted for its softness and versatility. The rising demand in Africa and across the world has had countries such as India, China, Brazil, and Peru competing for the biggest share in the market. And that is what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Now, be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show African News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching from all of us in Washington. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. An envelope is a flat paper container used to send a letter. So what could it possibly mean to
push the envelope?
There has got to be more to this expression.
Did you see what Adam is wearing today?
Yeah, well, he has always liked bright colors.
That guy really likes to push the envelope. I could not get away with wearing that to work.